Yes, okay, so first of all I want to thank the organizers for having me and providing me with the opportunity to present some of my research here. So some of it are things I've done previously, some of the things are part of my current research project, so it's very much work in progress. It's actually the very first time I'm presenting it, so I'm really looking forward to your feedback and suggestions. And also it is an example of non-spatial social network analysis intrasite, so I hope Tom will be very excited about the example I brought for you. So I've brought two case studies for you. There's a lot I can say about them, of course, but given the topic of this session, I will limit myself to addressing data in the data sets, then briefly the historical questions and the context. So why do I bother to engage in a network analysis? Why do I think that network analysis is the best way to solve the problems we have? Then I will briefly discuss the network models I have used. So for the one case study, it is a one-mode network, the other one is a two-mode network. Then I will address some of the measures I took to analyze these networks, to break them down and to understand them better. And then finally, obviously, some conclusions and perspectives for my research. So my two case studies I brought for you today are Pithekoussai. It's how is this book? No. Yes. A small volcanic island in the Bay of Naples. And the other one is Pontecagnano. It's also in Campania. It's located near the Pontecagnano of Salerno. I'm studying in my research project more micropolis in this area, so there are actually several different sites with similar data sets. So I'm actually gathering as many data as I can, but here I'm just presenting some of the things. One of the techniques. I normally use my iPad as remote control, but now I'm using PowerPoint, so it's looking in between my notes. So one of the disadvantages of my research is that it's extremely time-consuming because I'm actually dealing with conventional archaeological data. So old excavations conducted during Pithekoussai in the 1950s, 1960s. They've excavated a necropolis in a valley. They found like more than 1,000 tombs, of which I have published over 700 brilliant publications with a conventional find catalog. Similarly, in Pontecagnano, where the local officials have been excavating from the 1960s onwards, hundreds of tombs, and they have published them in conventional find catalogs. So one of my tasks, I would say one of my main tasks time-wise is inserting all this information into an Access database so I can extract this information afterwards. So a lot of brilliant work has been done in terms of studies of typology, chronology, so we know that the one necropolis should be dated in local Iron Age 1, goes down into the Orientalizing period and even later. Pithekoussai is dated at the transition of, let's say, middle geometric to late geometric towards the Orientalizing period. In human terms, this is like early 9th to late 7th century. It's also the period I'm focusing on. The archaeologists have obviously made a number of assumptions based on the finds we have from these sites. So Pithekoussai is generally seen as a Greek colony founded around 770 BC. This interpretation is based on Roman sources. So Strabo and Livius, for example, say that this island was colonized by Greeks, so archaeologists think it was colonized by Greeks. The native population is seen as marginal, so either slaves or they assume that native women might have married the first colonists. and there might have been small resident other groups being Phoenician traders. Pontecagnano is considered to be a colony, some sort of foundation by Villanova. They are the predecessors of the Etruscans. And the, let's say, idea about the social evolution of this site is that it is an early urbanizing community, which means that it is characterized by increasing social complexity, state formation, and synoikism, which means that several different small village nuclei come together into one central settlement. So these are the general assumptions, so to say. There are a number of problems with those. So for example, Pithekoussai is called a Greek colony, but the material, the objects the archaeologists have found in the tombs is incredibly diverse. It's like basically from all over the Mediterranean. You have things from Egypt, from the Levant, from Cyprus, from Rhodes, from Greece, from mainland Italy, from Spain, from the native mainland. So name it, you have it. So Greek colony is a little bit odd. Pontecagnano, okay, social complexity, but is this really as linear and uniform a process as archaeologists always say? So is it possible to say something more about that? And the integration of the nuclei is also usually depicted as a very uniform and linear process. So is this really so? So this is a little bit of context, the archaeological, historical context I'm dealing with. Because of the number of data we have, so it's actually hundreds of tombs, thousands of objects, I thought that a statistical analysis would be most appropriate, and because I'm looking at, or we are wondering about relations between things, I think network analysis is the most appropriate method to reply to some of the questions we have. So, as I said, I have inserted all these data about the tombs into an Access database. I find this very convenient because then I can extract easily the information into an Excel sheet, prepare them as a spreadsheet with some copy, paste, and editing, and I can then upload it in software, social network analysis software. Crucial, of course, is the definition of nodes and ties, and I consider for my analysis tombs to be a node. These are not actors, they are not sites, but I think a tomb represents a consistent set of acts carried out by a small group of people, family or friends, to bury a dead person. And they do this while complying to a set of norms, of religious norms, of ideology. So it's this social interaction actually behind the burial. I believe we can analyze through the material remains we have. It is of course a tricky exercise because burial is also an occasion for manipulation. So people who want to disrespect the rules might also use burial to do that. Or there can be social competition. So even though these are really the things that are very interesting for archaeologists, it's at the same time also a potential trap for your interpretation. And then the ties are based on similarities in the material of burial, so objects or structures, but it differs depending on the model I've used. So over to my first case study, the Pithekoussai necropolis. So I've conceived it as a two-mode network, an affiliation network. Of course, the affiliation network is actually one of the earliest network examples ever been described by Alison Davis from the University of Chicago in the 1940s, already going into the Deep South in the United States and looking at women and the social events they attended. And based on the shared social events these women had, they formed small subgroups. Another very famous case study is, of course, the Board of Interlocking Directors. So these are the examples I based myself on to look at some sort of cultural affiliation network of Pithekoussai to see how cultural contexts were actually organized per tomb. If there were certain patterns, if you could really, like for example, link small resident groups, for example, to exclusive links, etc. I think one of the advantages of a quantitative analysis is definitely that it includes all types of materials. So archaeologists usually look at the most beautiful parts and at the interesting things, but my analysis looks at all the material. Of course, pots are not people, so you need to interpret afterwards the patterns you've created. So this is an example of some of the things I've done earlier. So I use Pithekoussai. I also focused on the first period only. This is done in the context of my PhD research. I used then the extraction and slices, which are not pictured here, to find out which were the most important affiliations. And surprisingly for a Greek colony, the native population was the most important affiliation. So because this is historically archaeologically so very important, I thought to do some more research. So I now included all the tombs we have, and this is an image created in Gephi. And I've adjusted label size and color based on the Greeks. One of the easiest measures you can find in Gephi. It's already, spoiler alert, about what is going to follow. The most important affiliation in terms of degree is also the Turanian indigenous world. What I've also done, because this necropolis is highly stratified, you actually have about 30 levels of tombs, one on top of the other. So I've used a timeline in Gephi to make like small sections of all the tombs and the affiliations they had. Well, because there's not enough time to show it all, I give you a small selection of some of the things I've done recently. So not all layers have an equal amount of tombs. And in these images, I've also adjusted label size based on the degree. And you see in layer 13, for example, it's not really very pronounced, which is the most important affiliation. But in layer 20, you see already in terms of degree what the most important affiliation is. So I'm not showing all of the images, but you have to believe me that it's actually, it stays the same. Current becomes more important in layer 30, and it continues afterwards. So because I thought degree was a little bit misleading, I also tried between as centrality to see if this confirmed the image. And in layer 20 it does, in layer 30 where previously Corinth was most important, we now see that also the Turanian indigenous world is actually also more prominent. I want to add, I know the title of the session is best practice and worst practice, but I want to add that eigen vector centrality and closeness centrality did not yield very good results. And I really didn't want to go back to extraction because I like the powerful image you have with all the tools, so the idea of the affiliation network. So there's a lot more to be said, of course, but don't flash to 5 minutes and start panicking because I have a second case study to present to you. So the funerary networks of Pontecagnano, as I said, process of increasing inequality, of social stratification. So I want to know, is this measurable? Is the integration of the nuclei visible? In this case, I've made a one-mode network with the edges based on formal similarities in the tomb. So every time a tomb has the same object as another tomb, it receives a line. So extremely dense network. As you can see, because some of the tombs have like 50 objects, which immediately creates a lot of nodes. What I've also done, there are not as many layers as we have in Pithekoussai, and the archaeologists themselves identify more periods, but personally I believe that like 4 periods is the best we can get for now. So there's early Iron Age 1, early Iron Age 2, and which is basically 9th, 8th. And then I have end of the 8th, 7th century, 7th century. So what you can see here, diameter stays the same. Average path length actually becomes smaller, which is very interesting, but because this looks like it's the reverse of the process that archaeologists always believe that is going on. Instead of a linear evolution, it's actually some sort of a contraction. What we also see, some individuals very high betweenus centrality, the masses, so to say, are on the bottom. So this looks to me like we have a highly stratified society. I'm moving on. That actually is not moving gradually towards a higher stratification. What we do see in the next period, and here actually something is missing in the PowerPoint, which was my keynote presentation. So here we see that diameter becomes larger, average path length, actually, so it should have been there, it becomes smaller. We have small individuals highly ranked and the masses are on top. So this looks like richer get richer and poorer get poorer. So what I next wanted to see is the integration of the nuclei, if they're integrated or not. First period we see a small nuclei on top, the rest is fairly integrated. In the next period we see also the other process of what we would expect. So actually here we see two different groups. In the later periods we see indeed integration. Problem here is that we have fewer tombs, so I have to be very careful with what I say. It's almost the end. What I next tried to do was to understand better on what base the links were made. So I added edge attributes, not based on typology, but based on the ritual activity of what people do. So, for example, with the jug you would pour, with the cups of all kinds you would drink. So based on the ritual activity, I wanted to see what that meant in terms of integration or separation. So the pinkish on the top here is tomb type, which is very much linked to the right, so cremation versus inhumation. The center is based on objects or activities linked to eating. So it suggests that the center is bound together by eating, and this is actually very interesting because anthropologists say that feasting, ritual consumption of food and drink, is like a binding factor in societies. We actually see this confirmed in the data of Pithekoussai. When manipulated, feasting can also lead to state formation. So this is based on African case studies, so extremely interesting. So my conclusions beyond that social network analysis in funerary datasets are extremely powerful to understand historical questions better. So 2 modes for cultural affiliations, 1 mode for stratification and strategies, various measures, there are pro and contras. I think we need to experiment, and indeed the future will show us what can be most useful. So some of the things I would like to do in the future with my research is try multi-level analysis, include topography, more variables, refine categories, etc. But I'm very much looking forward to your suggestions. So thank you very much.